In today's episode, I continue the conversation with Dr. Arrayon Farlough-Rollins, and we hit a lot. We talk about the N-word, we talk about the Black church and the culture there around mental illness, and so much more. So sit back and relax and enjoy this continued conversation. Welcome back to the Suicide Prevention Lady podcast, where we make intervention easy. I'm your host, Dr. Rikki Turner. I am a suicide intervention expert. Please take note, I am the thinky kind of doctor and not a medical professional. So please do not take anything you hear in this episode as medical advice.
For example, the N word. Let's go there for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I've said it, but when I say it, I mean this ignorant human being is really getting on my nerves. What you just did was N-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know that I have never said that about a person who was white.
Right.
And so again, that is something that I've been desensitized to, in music and culture, in movies, where it has become acceptable for Black and brown people to call each other that word, but it is not acceptable for someone of a different race to call you that word.
Mm-hmm.
It's been something that's just kind of been indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And, just kind of breaking myself away from that cycle, because I know how livid I would be if someone used it towards me.
Mm-hmm.
But like if my dad would be like, "Come here, you little N."
Yeah.
I know that he's saying I just did something stupid.
I think that is one thing too. And I hear it all the time in the white community of, if we're not able to say it, they shouldn't be able to say it either. And it's like, it's not your word. Like, it's okay that this one isn't yours.
And to be honest, it is your word. It is white word. It's their word, but again, the way, it's not what you said, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's with any word.
Right.
Any, collective set of phrases. Some are, more particularly poignant than others.
Yeah. But
I wouldn't want somebody, even if they did say the N word, I wouldn't want somebody yelling at me, "You so stupid."
Right. Right.
Right. And, or, sometimes even when someone means something as a compliment, like we were just talking about, it's how you say it. It's like, "Oh, well, you're not really Black."
Not me with an eraser, just erasing your whole identity. God.
But I mean, that's something that we, I'm going to say collective we for Black folks. We need to work on that as a people. Because,
it's important. It's kind of like the gay community taking back the word gay, or queer. Taking queer, because it was used as a slur, and then they were like, "Bet now we're going to use it. I'm going to use it with pride." Now I've taken your power away.
Yes,
and to me, that's what it feels like with the Black community. It's like, you get to say the word. You know why? Because we used it to harm you for so long. Like, we used it to belittle you and to dehumanize you and to other you. And so if you want to take that shit back and say it all you want to, fine. If I'm by myself and I'm singing a song, because I listen to some ratchet music sometimes, I still pause on the N-word. I'm not saying it. I ain't gonna do it.
And I turn it down when I'm in the car with my kids. I'll yell bleep really loud.
Totally see you doing that.
Bleep. I'm like, no, you still don't. And I mean, I feel like it's the same as any other bad word. You don't get to say that.
Yeah.
You have to know what it means, and you have to, really earn the right to say that.
Yeah.
And my kids aren't there yet. They're not running out calling anybody the N word. But at the same time, they're not running out calling anybody the B word or saying the S word or any of those other things either.
Exactly.
And I feel like, everybody realizes. That's so funny. Everybody realizes it's a bad word.
Right.
But, the same way, someone would swear.
Right.
They have taken that word and for the most part, they're using it to its true meaning. And I feel like when I use it to that meaning. The meaning of the word is ignorant. Mm-hmm. So if your intention is not to call someone ignorant, then you probably shouldn't use it, because now it's out of context.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So what we were talking about earlier, and the dangers of getting rid of these programs, as somebody, I told you, and I was in grad school and I did that, right? Mm-hmm. No telling how many other times I've caused harm that I don't even know about, but that one is etched in my brain. And so the way I learned that my actions were harmful to people sometimes was through DEI programming. It was through privilege walks. It was through, I'm trying to remember some, these programs where you get into a room and you encounter somebody who is different than you, but on a human level.
Yes.
That's what these programs do. And so yes. I don't understand what it's like to grow up Black in America, in the South. I don't know. I will never know. That's not been my experience. But if you want to ever watch me just completely enraptured in somebody's story, let it be somebody who is different than me explaining how it feels to go through something that I've never been through. I am just I eat it like I wish I had popcorn. Like, I am here for this story because it's so I'm infatuated with other people's stories. I want to hear what it was like for you, because I can only tell you what it was like to grow up poor with heterosexual parents who were very young when they had us. I have a very specific upbringing. Mm-hmm. I only know that. I mean, we can all probably remember whenever we encountered somebody, we went to stay the night at somebody else's house and we're like, wait, what? Y'all do what now?
Yes. This is different.
At what point did you realize
food in your refrigerator all the time?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, going to somebody's house. The first time I went to somebody's house with an ice maker.
Nice.
Well, y'all mean you're rich? What?
That's what my
your appliances make your ice for you? I got trays.
That's what so my 15-year-old, when we got a Samsung refrigerator. Oh yeah, it's
that can send emails on for you and stuff.
Right. Yes. Very fancy. And when I tell you, me and my husband felt like we had come up when we got this refrigerator. And there was a kid at school. So when we got it, the one who's now 15, she was 10. And she had this bully at school. And we got this refrigerator, and the very next day she comes home and I was like, how was school today? Because I know this girl's been picking on her or whatever. I was like, how was school today? And she was like, oh, she tried it. And I said, you can't mess with me. I got a Samsung refrigerator. That's right.
That's how you put somebody in their place right there. I got a Samsung refrigerator. You ain't coming at me with no top of
tell me nothing. And I was like, well, I'm glad we can do that for her. Her upbringing is officially changed.
I love it. That's amazing. But in reality though, those programs are how I learned about other people and learned to appreciate other people's experiences. Those were if we went through, if you've ever been a resident assistant, you go through a training before school opens and everything. And there's learning how to do your job. And then there's learning how to do emergencies. And then there's, in general, you are going to have a floor of people who are all very different. And here's how you make them all feel welcome. And here's how you respond to them. And you're sensitive to the things that they may be going through. Yes. Those were my favorite of all of the things because it was so eye-opening and so educating. And so to me, the analogy that I came up with just thinking about this is DE&I programs. Imagine you're in a room and it's filled with people and the marginalized people are over in the shadows. The DEI program is the one that is shining the light and giving them space to feel safe and heard where everybody else is already standing in the spotlight.
I would take it a step further and say DEI programs are where marginalized people go to that corner, introduce themselves, ask their name, grab them by the hand, and bring them out of that dark place. And that, essentially that's what that multicultural relations office and officer did for me.
Yeah.
She found me in a dark place. She grabbed my hand. To be honest, she didn't even have to have a solution. And a lot of times these offices don't have the solution. What they have are 2 listening ears and a safe space for someone to just go and, be heard or be seen, or, tell someone about their lived experience or about their, what I feel like, what you just said, that the fact that you love hearing those stories and you love being around people who are different from you because it gives you the opportunity to learn. That is what marginalized people need. They don't need a fix. I think we've all pretty much accepted that this, the government that we have, not just the current government, but a lot of it in the past, not just here in the US, but all over the world, governments typically, will make promises to fix, but they don't really have the power to fix. And subsequently, what we do is, see what they can do, hold on tight. And if we get a little something, then great. And if we don't get nothing, then our expectations weren't that high. And Juneteenth, with that administration, we got something. It wasn't a fix. What it was a listening ear. It brought this holiday to the forefront of a nation that tried to erase it.
Right. It's validation too.
It says that we messed up. You guys were slaves an extra 6 months longer than everybody else because we didn't get the word out properly. My bad. We're going to get the word out now.
Right.
We're going to tell people your story.
And here's the thing too, bringing this back to the topic of suicide, Black men especially have a much higher rate of suicide than anybody else, any other demographic. Why do we think that is? I mean, we can give a lot of reasons.
I'm gonna not challenge that, but kind of add a little bit of a caveat. I think that their rate of suicide is high, but I believe that Black women think about it more. We're just unsuccessful.
And that's true in general of women in general. Like women have more attempts that turn out to be failed attempts. Men have fewer attempts, but they are successful in the first try much more than women are. That is fair.
And I think that there are a lot of contributing factors to that. They have a lot of things against them. One, they are Black. So that's, the first real thing that as a culture, and this is, internally, and I'm going to make a sweeping generalization. As a culture, we like our men to be strong. It's seen as a weakness when they're not. It is seen as someone who is, it's a real machismo. I guess that's, someone who speaks Spanish. It's a real macho attitude, machismo, where there's this expectation of them that, they're supposed to be big, strong. Nothing is supposed to affect them. They're supposed to protect their women. They're supposed to protect their family. They're supposed to really carry the weight of the culture. And I think the pressure just gets to be too much.
Yes.
It just gets to be too much. And that's the case for a lot of people who, attempt suicide. They just, the pressure gets to be too much. I think the difference between Black men and others, including Black women, is that they don't have anybody to turn, or they feel like they don't have anybody to turn to.
Yeah.
Because if their woman is expecting them to be this strong macho protector, then we can't go to her.
Right.
We certainly can't go to white folks.
Right.
So who do I turn to?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, they can't even turn to each other, because the expectation is that, they're all these strong men, and to the point where they can even brag about how, strong they are and how much they protect and how much they, are able to be the head and all these things, to where they feel it is vulnerable to even talk amongst each other.
Right.
And so the dark place gets darker, the hole gets deeper.
Yes.
And it is killing them. It's unfortunate, and it's killing them.
It is literally killing them.
The stigma around therapy in the Black community.
Yeah.
I mean, there are stand-up comedians who have done a whole show about it.
Yeah.
Like, that is like exactly how it would sound. Like I tried to tell my mom I had postpartum depression after my youngest was born.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my mom, I was like, Mama, and I said it just blunt, Mama, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
And she was like, let me cook something for you.
Can I call her and tell her I'm depressed? Will she cook something for me?
She was like, what do you want to eat?
Yeah.
Like that, that's my mom. Like, I'm sure she could see that there was, some sadness, or,
yeah.
She noticed. That's why we were, having that conversation. She could tell that I wasn't my usual self.
Mm-hmm.
But, that was too much reality.
Yeah.
For her. And I think that also has to do, that's also a contributing factor to, Black men and the suicide rate. They can't even tell their mom.
Mm-mm. No, and that's, if you look at it from like a macro level, you look at this, you look at the representation of a Black man and all the confounding factors, right? Mm-hmm. Black men are allowed to have mental illness. So
what?
Start there. They have mental illness.
Says who? No.
Says who? Right. Exactly. If I could get one thing through the brains of everybody in America, it would be stop pretending that the brain is the only organ that cannot be diseased. Because you gotta wear glasses for your eyes, and you get moles cut off of your skin because they go funky and cause cancer, and you've got all these heart conditions, and you diabetes, and like every other organ of the body, we're like, oh, it can be diseased. Yeah. And then it's like depression, you need to get over it.
Yep.
That is quite literally an organ of your body that is diseased, just like anybody else. Like, it's that simple. Let's stop making it a problem. Anyway, I have gone on a tangent.
And I would also say, that other parts of our culture need to hear that too, because, religion, the Black church for a long time, it's starting to now, but, they did not recognize mental illness. Your faith just wasn't strong enough.
Yep.
You were not, you weren't praying hard enough.
Yep. You just need to pray harder.
You need to throw your burdens on the Lord and then let them go.
Right.
So it was like it was like it's nowhere to turn.
Yeah.
Nowhere to turn.
Yeah.
I am glad that we live, now more so than ever, in a time where people are beginning to recognize that that mental illness is in fact illness. We could just say illness.
Yeah.
And that you can't pray it away.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pray away that second voice.
Right.
I mean, telling you to do mean things.
And that's the thing I need people to understand. No one is saying your God isn't powerful enough to heal that.
Correct.
But what I am saying is,
in the meantime, go talk to somebody.
Right. Yeah. Like, maybe the way he heals that is you talk to somebody, because we have mental health help. We have antidepressants. We have anti-anxiety medicine. We have somatic therapies. We have all kinds of different therapies for all kinds of different people and all kinds of different problems.
That's right. Let them minister to you. That's how we say it now.
Yes.
You're gonna let this mental health professional minister to you.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
Let God use them.
It's like putting the parable of the guy in the rowboat who's in a storm, and he's like, God, help me, save me. And then a boat comes by and they're like, hey, do you need any help? He's like, no, God's going to save me. And then, another one comes by.
Helicopter comes by.
The helicopter drops the ladder and they're like, no, thanks. God's going to save me. And it's like, well, they get to heaven and it's like, why did you save me? He's like, what else did you want?
Right. I sent you a rowboat and helicopter.
Like I sent you everything you needed. You didn't take none of it. So, that's the thing, is like, this all is interconnected. But going back to you look at a Black person, I'm going to even go back to just a Black person, not even just a Black man, or a minority, somebody who is a marginalized group. You have the thing that everybody else can also experience. We have the mental illness, but then you also have the microaggressions that are happening every day that these other people are not getting. And then you have the pressures of an institution or a system that is built against you, like still making less money than anybody else, still not getting loans, like home loans and stuff, like everybody else, or to the
redlining, being blockbustered into a specific neighborhood.
Yes, like these things are still happening. And here's the thing. I wish I could remember the name of the book, and I may look it up and put it in the show notes. You may know it, but it's basically like the history of redlining in the Black neighborhoods, basically.
It's called "Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria?" There
you go. Okay, that's something you could read just to understand. Like, this is the systems that were built to keep Black people separate from whites and other than whites and treated differently and less than whites was calculated and surgical.
Absolutely.
It was
all the way
intentional.
From the bottom to the top, all the way to, our historically Black colleges and institutions and universities. I mean, you said you said separate but equal. But then it was never equal.
It was never equal.
And the funding was never equal. And the level of resources was never equal. But you still expected them to learn what everybody else was learning and really to be better than everyone else. Because if not, then they're not qualified to get a job.
Right.
And they're not qualified to get a home loan.
Mm-hmm.
And they are stuck in this neighborhood that they've grown up in because that's all they've ever known. They've essentially been confined to it. The system around them is pushing down and on them all the time. And I say that us. And then you have the crab mentality too after that. Crabs in a bucket, are you familiar? Where if you have a bunch of crabs in the bucket and one crab tries to get out, then the rest of the crabs will pull them down. And we call that the crab mentality. So if an African-American or, Black and brown people, if you try to do better, you try to make better of yourself, you try to go to an Ivy League school, you try to, work in, outside of things that would be considered the cultural norm, then your culture pulls you back down into the bucket. Oh, you think you're better than us? Oh, she talks like a white person.
Mm-hmm.
We get that, internally. And so it's like, what are you supposed to do?
Right.
What are you supposed to do? And then it's not just, microaggressions, but from inside of the culture, it is aggression.
Mm-hmm.
And you're, just navigating that. And so, for example, my voice right now on this podcast is very different from the voice that, Dr. Turner.
Yeah.
My Dr. Farlough-Rollins voice and my Arrayon in Streets voice.
Right.
The code switch is very different.
Yep.
But it's a part of learning how to navigate.
Right. And that's a lot of mental load to expect somebody to handle on top of dealing with mental illness.
It is. And I mean, it was modeled for me because, of my very particular upbringing. My mom went to college. She didn't finish, but she went to college. And my dad was in the military. That is, very specific, very specific. And I didn't grow up in the South, but my parents did. So, you know, growing up as a, you know, Black kid in a brown neighborhood in California, I learned Spanish, but my dad speaks French. I'm like the only person I can say I'm a pineapple and I'm a banana in French. Like, that's the extent of
Right.
I'm never going to use either of those, you know.
Right.
But
I hope not.
right, I hope not. I'm a banana. I don't know when I could use that, but yeah,
a mental psychotic break. That's when you would use that.
And I learned Spanish. So, you know, I'm going to go back to images. My kindergarten teacher was an African-American woman who spoke Spanish. And then Claire Huxtable on TV, she spoke Spanish. Like, Black people who speak Spanish. I was a full-grown adult, but I was pretty old when I realized that Puerto Ricans and people from the Dominican were, you know, some of the same folks that came across the Atlantic. You know, and that, you know, they're Black people who speak Spanish. All, you know, Afro-Latinas or Afro-Latinos. Like, I was full-grown adult before I even realized that was a thing. All I saw was what was there in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, everyone's experience. You saw what was in your neighborhood, and your upbringing was formed and based around that. And so being too quick to be offended and not stopping to ask that question, you know, what do you mean by that? You miss out on the opportunity to learn about somebody's upbringing.
Yeah.
And why, you know, not why it was different, but sometimes why it was different, how it was different from yours. And again, you guys can learn from each other. And that really is what these DAI programs are. It's the opportunity to learn from each other. And that's just being ripped away, because that's not learning from each other is not happening organically. People are walking around with their face in their, you know, in their tablet or their phone. Or
I went through a diversity. It was a year-long diversity program at work. It was discontinued at the end of this year. But it's called SEED. And there's a concept we learned in it that of this, there's windows and mirrors. And so when you're getting to know somebody, or you're seeing somebody's talking about something, and it's completely different than what your experience has been, that's looking through a window and seeing something that you've not experienced. So you're taking that in, versus a mirror is you're talking about something like you were talking about, like the growing up poor or something, you know, and I see that as a mirror, because I know that is the same experience that I've had. And so you're constantly looking through life, and your experience either windows or mirrors. The problem is when people shut the blinds on the windows. You got to keep your windows clean. You got to be able to see through those windows. And so white people in general, not everybody, of course, but in general, the issue with closing down these programs and everything, and being shut off by this, and trying to tell ourselves that there's no racism anymore, and there's no, like, these institutions aren't affecting them anymore and stuff like that. It's walking through a thing just looking for mirrors.
Yes.
And ignoring your windows altogether.
Yes.
And the world's not like that.
It's not. And I feel like people try to create that world. And I'm going to say this is going to sound super controversial coming from me, but I'm here for it. I am not a fan of the HBCU. I'm not a fan of anything that's predominantly anything.
Yeah.
Because that's not how the world is.
Right.
And it's almost like creating a utopia for single culture.
Yeah.
Or one race. And I know that, you know, it stems from a place where it had to be so because of the laws.
Yeah.
So, you know, I understand that. I understand the history and wanting to preserve the culture. But essentially, you know, what exactly are we preserving in that culture?
Yeah.
Are we preserving a history of marginalization? And again, like I said, that's very controversial. Like if if I were in a room full of Black people right now, I'd be getting like all the side eyes, and um, and people be like, "You've been hanging around them white folks too long."
Yeah.
But that, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with diversifying and being around people who are not like you, because that's what makes you a better, more educated, more sympathetic or empathetic person. And it also gives you somewhere to go. It gives you somewhere to go when your own people are doing you dirty, because not all skin folk is kin folk.
Or yeah, I heard that.
And so it gives you someplace else to go. There are things where I feel like other if I were looking through a mirror, those people wouldn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are times when I go looking for the window.
Yeah.
To talk to them about that experience. And sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes I do go looking for a mirror.
Sometimes it's validation. There's nothing wrong with that.
Correct. But it's helpful to have both.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, you can't close the blinds. You have to have both, because that is the world in which we live. And if we cannot coexist, we can't coexist peacefully, then that's taking 1,000 steps backwards.
That's what I'm afraid of with this, is we're putting America back into a like funhouse mirror.
Yes.
Instead of having windows and those type of things.
Yeah, like the phrase "Make America Great Again."
Yeah, specific. Please be specific about what was great before.
Yes, exactly.
Can you please, like, line by line? I need to know.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Yeah. That's going to be the phrase. What do you mean?
What do you mean? So I have a question. When this last election came out the way it did, we saw on social media Black women saying, "This isn't our fight. Stand down."
Uh-huh.
And we saw well-meaning white women saying, "How can I identify myself as a safe person to you? Like, I don't want to be," because around the same time, it was a little bit before this, but if you were as a woman, if you were in the woods, and would you be more afraid of a bear or a man? And the men were just like, these women have lost their minds. Why are they picking the bear? And the women are like, you obviously don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the conversation then changed to, okay, now I want to know Black women. Would you rather be alone at work with a white woman or a white man? Mm-hmm. And they were picking white man over and over and over again. And the white women were like, what? Why? Why am I not safe? Why? And of course, making it about themselves. And it was like, shut up and listen for a second. Find out why they don't feel safe around us. Stop with the performative blue bracelets and that can still be weaponized. So it's not really doing a whole lot. Like,
this is my inappropriate humor again. But there's a lot of truth to it. White men have always loved us. It's just facts, Ask Sally Hemings.
Yeah.
White men have always loved us. They and I feel even now, just in my workplace, in general, I feel like they have always just kind of had an awe,
Mm-hmm.
of Black women. It's like, we throw a lot of crap at them, but they still seem to,
mm-hmm.
Make it out on top. And it's a curiosity, about us. And I have never been fearful of, in the workspace working with white guys or white men. But any supervisor I've ever had a major issue with has been a white woman. And I don't know if it comes from a place of hate or a place of lack of education or a place of maybe even jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want your job, honey. I came here to do my job. And I feel like a lot of times that has been the That has been my experience, my personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you're correct. I am much more comfortable now. Have I worked with white women in the past? Absolutely.
Right.
Will I, if I see that a white woman is the hiring manager, will I still apply? Yes, sure will. If I want the job.
Yeah.
Will I work hard to, meet their expectations? Sure will. But to me, and this might not be a white woman versus white man, it might just be a woman versus man. I feel like the expectations of women are typically higher.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you're right.
And I'm speaking for myself too. I feel like the expectations, of women in general are higher. I feel like, even in the home, we do something and, it is low level thinking for us. And then, our husband will be like, that's fantastic, honey. Thank you. But that's how it is at work too.
Yeah.
When your boss is a man, when your supervisor is a man, you could be doing bare minimum and they're like, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because their expectation just isn't as high. Their emotion, especially at work, isn't as high. They don't have anything to prove. And I feel like, women in general, not just white women, especially in corporate America, they feel like they have something to prove. They feel like they are trying to earn their seat at the table too. Mm-hmm. And, to see someone step into the room, has that same work ethic, is getting praised for that work ethic. Sometimes that, and I'm not, again, that is not just white women. That's any woman. And
yeah,
I had some of the same experiences with working for Black women.
So here's what I would like to give some advice to the white women specifically on this call.
Sure.
On this. And then if I'm giving bad advice, feel free to say, well, that's not how I would say that, and go ahead and correct me. Okay. Instead of looking for some sort of symbol or whatever, I'm going back to the blue bracelets. I really waffled on that. I was like, I really want to put on a blue bracelet because I want them to feel safe around me. And I also realized that can be really performative, and anybody can put on a blue bracelet just to suck you in. And they recognize that. Like, I didn't really see what it was going to do as a movement. As a white woman, especially in a supervisory role or as a colleague, if you're picking up on a vibe from a Black woman at work, whether it be the person that reports to you or a colleague or whatever, number one, do not take offense to that. It is likely that you didn't do anything. Correct. And this is a trauma response from them, and it's not about you.
There it is. It's not about you.
Not about you. Don't worry about it. It's not about you. Continue to be a safe person regardless. Continue to be curious about them. Continue to support them and find ways to support them. In my humble opinion, do not go to them and say, how can I be a supportive person for you? Can you teach me how to be better? Do your own research, do your own work. And when you know better, do better. Like,
I would say the best advice I can give is don't ask any question you don't really want the answer to. Because I feel like, the honesty, the boldness. And again, this is from, trying to earn our seat at the table. We've learned, again, how to navigate other cultures and maneuver. So when, we're around men, we talk like the guys. We think like a man, mm-hmm. and look like a woman, and so if we say something that's blunt, we are praised for that by males.
Mm-hmm. Women don't like that as much.
They don't, and they will. It sometimes that it rubs them the wrong way, and when something rubs them the wrong way, then we as women have a harder time letting that go.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a guy will wake up the next morning and be like, "Oh, that happened yesterday," and so we need to learn what and when to let go, mm-hmm. and get to know your coworkers enough to where if you just so happen to say something that is a little off kilter, then they know that, that it wasn't from a place of hurt.
Right. That you're open to feedback too. Like,
yes.
You can't be defensive when someone says, hey, what you did offended me.
Right.
Or whatever. You can't be offended by that. It's got to be this is a learning opportunity for me, and take it on the chin and do better.
Yes. And I'm going to also, on the other side of that, I'm going to give that same message to Black women. It's not always about you. Sometimes, we don't get along because we perceive that someone is out to get us. That comes from a long, deep-seated, cultural indoctrination that, white folks are out to get us, or white women are out to get us. And I feel like sometimes we wear our heart on our sleeve a little bit too. There's a prejudice of mistrust already built up when we get there. And that's unfortunate that, both sides of the coin are trying to dig their way out of a hole up front.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, just making sure that no one is taking it personally, that is business. Making it about yourself is the same as holding a hot potato. Sometimes that other person doesn't even know you're upset with them, or you don't know that they're upset with you.
Right. Okay, you've spent a lot of time with me today, more than we scheduled, but thank you so much. This may be a two-parter. I don't know.
You're going to have to edit out a lot of this. All these random stories.
I don't know. I kind of like them. I like, me, I like stories. If people fell in love with you on this podcast and they would like you to come and do some, I don't know, what do you offer? If they just want to work with you somehow, what do you offer? How do they get in contact with you?
So I am a public speaker. So if you would like for me to come do keynotes or workshops surrounding, what do I do? Job satisfaction among minorities, and how that plays into, mental health, or how long to stay at a job, longevity at your role. I definitely speak about those things. I would say, corporate training, I'm still very much involved in student life and student affairs. Even though I'm not on campus, I still do lots of RA trainings and workshops to help people to become more inclusive in the place where people live. So there's that. Happy to do that. I love to travel. So, especially if you're in, I don't know, Alaska's on my bucket list. If you're in Alaska and you want me to come speak, sure.
Yeah, I'm manifesting New Zealand to invite me to come speak.
I'm a little afraid of New Zealand and the wildlife there.
Yeah. How do they find you? How do they get in contact with you?
They can contact me on LinkedIn. I am Doc Farlough-Rollins on LinkedIn.
Love it.
And I have a very public Facebook page where I post all kinds of funnies and things about my kids and stuff like that. So Facebook and LinkedIn professionally.
Okay. I will link that in the show notes. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, especially on perfectly acceptable.
Really long notice.
Plenty of notice. Really appreciate you. Love you, friends, so much. Can't wait to see you in person soon.
Yes. I love you.
Okay. I love you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And I also hope that at some point in either last week's episode or this one, you were like, ooh, I think I do that. Or, ooh, just having some curiosity around how you can be a better advocate and ally for the Black community or any marginalized groups. If you did, please check out the show notes. I'm going to include some resources. If you would like to continue to educate yourself on what these experiences are, please check these out. The more we educate ourselves, the more we investigate why we feel certain ways, the more we look into why society works the way it does, the more we learn and the more empathetic we can be, and the safer we can be for our marginalized friends. So check out the show notes and see if any of these, I'm going to suggest some books, some podcasts, and maybe some YouTube videos. I also encourage you to check out something going on in your community. I know we're in July now, and so it may not be something Juneteenth related, but there's always programs and things of that nature. Put yourself into a space where maybe you're a little uncomfortable, but it's a new experience for you. Visit a Black church. They're so much fun. Go to an event celebrating historical Black figures. Go to a concert or something that you have never experienced. Put yourself in those situations so that you can gain an understanding, because it makes you a more empathetic and a safer person out in the world. Next week on the podcast, I'm sitting down with Stephanie Morton Small. She's fascinating. She's a wine industry exec, she's a songwriter, and she's a speaker. She opens up about the moment that she nearly ended her life, and she literally heard a voice that stopped her. It's a fascinating story. We're going to talk about high-functioning depression, intuition as survival, and why being vulnerable might be your biggest strength. So come back to the episode next week where we continue to learn how to intervene with ease.